and then take your CMOS battery out if you can do that. God damn it.
Stop right there! Do you actually know how to install your RAM sticks correctly? Well, let me teach you. After signing their adoption papers, take them out of their case and let them smell the air of your musty, dusty, crusty ass room. It's time to install them in your high-end room. Simply align the hole on this stick on that little bump on the slot. Make sure that the locks are pushed down on both sides, or sometimes it can only be one, which is in this case. Insert your RAM into both of the holes, not like that, and then just press down until you hear a click. There we go. Sorry, let me get this junk out of here just so you can see better. Alternatively, you could also get your RAM stick and do it while your PC is flipped upright. But personally, I wouldn't recommend this at all, so don't do that. Make sure you're also pressing down with fair and even force, otherwise you'll frick. In conclusion, make sure that you fit these in the slots perfectly and make sure that your entire PC is lying down, and also take good care of these. Your computer doesn't boot after you've inserted 2 additional new RAM sticks in it. As you can see, it's clearly powered on, but there's no boot. Well, I'm gonna tell you how to fix this problem. Make sure that your PC is fully disconnected from the power. Give it a few button presses just to make sure there's no more power in it. Locate your CMOS battery, which should be nearby your graphics card or directly under it. Press this latch over here towards that way, and then take your CMOS battery out if you can do that. God damn it. Maybe you want to flip your PC upwards so that the battery can fall out easier. There you go. After this step, make sure you have inserted all of your new RAM sticks inside, and then carefully put the CMOS battery back in by pushing this a little bit, and then pushing it down. There you go. Doing this should reset the BIOS back to its default setting, so there you go. It's now configured for all 4 of your sticks. Have you ever seen all of these different GPU brands but don't know which one to get? Well, I'm here to help you out. Reference models. Reference models are basically just the standard of these, fresh from the factory. Zotac. If you want something for good pricing and also decently compact, go with Zotac. They also provide pretty decent cooling. Gigabyte. Gigabyte provides good performance, also cooling, and also RGB. PNY. PNY is known for good performance while also having solid prices. Inno3D. Inno3D is arguably one of the more cheaper brands you can get, but it really depends on where you are. Palette. Like Inno3D, this is one of the best deals you can get off of GPUs, at least again depending where you are. Good pricing and also good cooling. Asus. They can be good for overclocking, have good cooling solutions, and also great build quality. MSI arguably makes some of the best designs for GPUs, well sometimes, and like Asus has good cooling and decent overclocking potential. And lastly, Galax. Once again depending where you are, Galax can be one of the best pricings for GPUs. They provide decent cooling and aesthetics. Sapphire. Sapphire manufactures one of the highest quality of GPUs out there, mostly high-end, the fancy stuff. They also provide good cooling and good aesthetics. XFX, good price to performance and good cooling. Power Color, good overclocking potential, good cooling, and extremely high performance. HIS. Okay, you're gonna scratch your head for this one because I don't think anybody has seen HIS anymore. But they used to make good cooling and quiet GPUs. Again, you won't really see them around anymore. Your new graphics card just finally came in and you realize you don't know how to install it for some reason. So don't worry, HiddenGold will teach you all about how to install this graphics brick. First off, you're gonna want to make sure that your PC can actually fit your card. God damn it. After ripping all of its organs out, let's do this properly. Inside of your motherboard, you should see this PCIe x16 slot. Normally this could be more than one, but always choose the one that's always on top. Also, before anything, make sure to put this on a flat surface. Simply push down the lock that is normally found on the right side, and then insert your graphics card right into the slot. And that is how you install your graphics card. I just realized how many bent pins there are there. Can you guys tell I don't use this motherboard? Also, in most modern cards, make sure to plug in this PCIe connector into their slot to supply enough power to the card. Good job! We are almost done building a fully defective PC. It is so hot when I have to film up here. So you want to upgrade your storage but you don't know how to install your NVMe SSD? The first thing you want to do is navigate your M.2 slot. You can easily find them in your motherboard's manual, but most of the time it's always underneath the CPU, and there's also an extra down the line. M.2 SSDs can vary in length, so this standoff can be moved to either here or sometimes on other motherboards even further that way. The top M.2 slot, which is the closest to the CPU, has the highest bandwidth, just letting you know. To install an SSD, you have to approach from an angle just like this, line it up with that notch over there, stick it in, just by sliding it ever so slightly, and then push down. Now your motherboard should come with this very tiny screw that is meant to hold down the SSD through that standoff. If you have a magnetic screwdriver, it's even better, and then just stick it to the slot and then just screw it in. Just letting you know, on higher end motherboards, M.2 slots could be hidden under a heat spreader. Again, consult your motherboard's manual if you need to know how to remove it. And there you go, you have just installed your brand new SSD.
Number 15. HDD as a boot drive.
Well, you're not really supposed to do that. Hard drives are really meant to just store away some extra files you need, like maybe spare videos or a Steam library. But in any case, I'll teach you how to install one. All you need is one SATA cable from your power supply and also a SATA data cable, which comes with your motherboard. And if your computer comes with one, which it normally should, a hard drive bay. Connect the SATA power into this slot over here, and then connect SATA data into here. Now your hard drive should look something like this. The next step is to connect the other SATA data and connect it to your motherboard, which is usually found on the right side over there. Simply slot this guy right in. I cannot see. There you go. Depending on your case, your hard drive bay may look a little different, but in this very old computer's case, it's right over here. But anyway, yeah, that's how you install a hard drive. Just promise me you don't use it as a boot drive or I will come to your house. Do you still not know all the connections to your PC yet? Again, we will be using my test board. Let's start with the front panel connectors. This connector is for audio. Audio normally always connects to this one over here. It's in the bottom left of the motherboard. Simply align the holes with the corresponding pins. This right here is USB, which is usually found on the middle bottom. Right there, USB. This one is all the front panel cables. It looks hard, but trust me, it's not, because they're all labeled down here anyway. First, start with power LED positive and negative. So these two go into these two pins. Next is the power switch. Power switch is usually right here, right next to the power LED positive and negative. For the next one, not all power supplies will have this, but you'll have HDD LED. This goes on the bottom left, right over here. And lastly is the reset switch. This goes right here, the bottom right. There can also be USB 3 found on the right side of the motherboard.
And on newer motherboards, there's also USB-C.
And that's honestly it for front panel connections. Well, today, I'll teach you about the power supply connections. The thing is, a PC can fully boot with only 3 things. All you need is the EPS cable or CPU cable, the 24-pin cable, and the PCIe cable. In most modern power supplies today, the EPS cable should have 8 pins, but since this is an older one, it only has 4. The way you differentiate this from the PCIe connector is that this will normally split into 4 pins and 4 pins, instead of the PCIe cable 6 pins and 2 pins. It's normally always on the top left of the board. And to connect the 24-pin, it's always on the right side of the board. And the PCIe cable goes to your graphics card, assuming that your system has one, which it normally should. And there you go, your PC is ready to boot. But there's still some other cables you have to consider. This right here is the Molex cable, considered an outdated cable, but normally provides power to stuff like fans and other stuff. And this L-shaped cable is called the SATA cable. Again, this is used to power stuff similar to Molex. And there you go, that is all of the power supply connections. What are these CPU temperatures? I've never replaced the thermal paste on this thing. So you know what? To kill 2 birds with 1 stone. This is the Johnsbow CR1200. This cooler was $10. What? You guys think I can afford a Noctua or something? I'm not rich. So we are going to use some alcohol to remove the old thermal paste. And the thermal paste we're gonna use is this generic thermal paste. What? You guys think I'm gonna buy Cooler Master? Who do you think I am, a guy with infinite money? So the Intel bracket should go like this. Take some of these clear pieces and put them inside through these holes. Now we take one of these black pins and just push them right through. So we're just gonna do a cross pattern. And then we push this down. There we go. And now for the moment of truth. Oh yeah, look at that beautiful thing. And these are now its new temps. Does the speed of your RAM actually matter? Well, to answer if it does matter, it's an easy yes. But the question of do you need it depends. For general performance and everyday tasks, you don't typically need high-speed RAMs as much. It can improve with some responsiveness, but overall it's not super noticeable. Now, if you're someone who likes to game a lot, RAM speed can matter depending on the games you play. If you play more memory-heavy games, then yes, you would need higher speed RAM. So for gaming, only you can answer that.
If you're a content creator that has to deal with photoshopping, video editing, 3D rendering, whatever, all that stuff, then yes, you will significantly benefit from higher speed RAM. So overall, you only really need to focus on higher speed RAM if you need it. Speaking of content creation, I am a content creator that's only running 2400 megahertz? Let's change that. There are so many CPUs in the market right now, and you may be confused as to which one to get. So many different names, it's confusing. Well, I'm here to help you. AMD CPUs are called Ryzen, and they all start with 4 different numbers: 3, 5, 7, and 9. They each cover a certain level: entry level, mid-range, high-end, and enthusiast. There's also the Ryzen Threadripper. However, this CPU isn't really meant for gaming, it's more of for workstations and machine learning stuff. Let's take this CPU for example, the Ryzen 7 7900X3D. 7 indicates that this is a high-end CPU. Now what do the other 4 numbers mean? The first digit is the generation. The second digit is its performance. This can go from 9 to 8 to 7 to basically the higher the number is, the better it performs. And the last 2 digits are just variations of this. This can either be 00 or 50. And lastly, there are suffixes. AMD can either provide X, G, or X3D, or none at all. Intel CPUs are called the Intel Core lineup. The next number usually ranges from i3, i5, i7, and i9. They cover entry level, mid-range, high-end, and enthusiast. The next 1 or 2 digits, depending if your CPU has 4 digits or 5 digits, is the generation. For example, in this case, this is the 7th generation, and in this case, this is the 13th generation. The last 3 remaining numbers simply mean the performance level. The higher this number is, the better it is. Next is the suffixes. Intel has a lot more suffixes compared to AMD. K means it's unlocked for overclocking. G means it has integrated graphics. F means it requires an external graphics card. KF means it's unlocked for overclocking like K, but like F needs an external graphics card. U means low power laptops. H means powerful laptops. HX and HK are the highest of highs of laptops. And T means power efficient. Here's the entire list. A little while back, Intel just released its newest Intel Core Ultra lineup, or 15 series whatever, and now because of that I have to make a follow-up to this video. So let's do it. Intel Core Ultra. This is the lineup name, previously known as Intel Core. The next number can be 3, 5, 7, or 9. This is basically the same as the previous lineups i3, i5, i7, and i9, still respectively in this order. Next, we have 3 digits. The first digit represents performance level. The higher this number is, the better it performs. And the last 2 digits simply indicate that this is a different model of that CPU. And lastly is a suffix. We have one brand new from Intel, which is the V suffix. The V suffix basically means it's a more optimized version of the base CPU. So take for example the Intel Core Ultra 9288V. This is 9 indicating that it's a flagship CPU, 2 is the performance level, and 88 is a variant of the CPU, and V is a more optimized version. And there you go, now you know about Intel Core Ultra. But keep in mind right now that they're going through some instability issues, so just know that when you're planning to use one for your next build. Did you know that your PC has more than just RAM for short-term memory? And it's also significantly faster. This is called CPU cache. CPU cache is basically faster RAM, except for the fact that it can carry a little less than what RAM normally holds. Let me explain the hierarchy of cache first. If you didn't know, CPU cache can have 3 levels, L1, L2, and L3, and sometimes there can even be L4. Basically, the higher the level, the lower the amount of storage, but the faster it is. L1 cache carries less than half a megabyte, but it's the fastest. L2 can carry maybe a few megabytes, and L3 can carry around less than 100 megabytes. Now, why exactly does CPU cache exist? Well, it's to help with latency, and of course so it doesn't put so much stress on your RAM. High CPU cache can be very beneficial. Things like data processing, video rendering, or even gaming can benefit from CPU cache. However, of course, the bigger and better your CPU cache is, the more expensive it is. Anyway, that's basically the in the nutshell of CPU cache. VRAM here, VRAM there. Oh, your graphics card has too little VRAM. What even is VRAM? Well, I'll tell you what VRAM is. Very similar to your standard RAM, except RAM handles general information, while VRAM handles graphics and rendering information. While RAM has different speeds, you normally don't have to worry about that for VRAM because they're always very high speed anyway. The only thing that really matters to VRAM is its GDDR generation and also its capacity. Nowadays, I'm pretty sure the highest is GDDR6X, so yeah. Now, if you need high capacity VRAM or not? Well, just like all things, it really depends. Here's a little more detailed list. 4 to 8 gigabytes is good for 1080p. 1080p, 8 to 12 gigabytes is good for 1440p, and for 4K it's good to go above 12 gigabytes. Now just to be clear, VRAM is not limited to only gaming, it can also be used for multimedia stuff, just like 3D rendering or video editing. So whether or not you need high capacity VRAM, it's all up to you depending on the things you do. I mean, my ass over here is rocking a GTX 1650 and I'm perfectly fine where I'm at. Have you ever wondered what is the difference between Nvidia's TIs and Supers? Well, it's a little bit confusing, but don't worry, I got your back. Typically, TI is better than Super. Why? Well, let's start off with what they mean. Super means it's an enhanced version of a base card, while TI means it's a better performance than the base card. So in some way, the Super is a little bit of a step down compared to TI, but not so much. I know, it's a little confusing, but just hear me out on that. But yeah, in conclusion, if you see something like the RTX 4070 Ti Super, it basically means it's an enhanced version, meaning more performance, and also a more optimized version of the card. Again, Nvidia's really weird on this, but that's basically all I can explain. Have you ever wondered how Nvidia names their GPUs? Well, let me teach you. We first start off with the series. These can come in GeForce, Quadro, and RTX-A. GeForce is usually the gaming graphics card lineup, while Quadro and RTX-A are mostly for workstations. Next is the prefix. There are notably 3 prefixes when it comes to Nvidia cards: GT, GTX, and RTX. GT is the lower end models, GTX is usually high performance but no ray tracing or DLSS, and RTX is with ray tracing and DLSS. Next is the generation number. For example, in this one, the GTX 1080 Ti, this is the 10th generation, and in this one, the GTX 550 Ti is the 5th generation. And then next is the performance tier, which is usually the last 2 numbers. 50 or lower usually means entry level, 60 to 70 usually means mid-range, and 80 to 90 mostly means high-end or enthusiast. And for suffixes, I already talked about them in a different short. We have TI and Super, and there you go. Have you ever wondered how AMD names their GPUs? Well, let me help you. First comes the series. These can either be Radeon, Radeon Pro, or Instinct. Radeon is the one you'll see everywhere. It's mostly sold for gaming GPUs. Radeon Pro is mostly for workstations, and Instinct is mostly for servers and AR learning stations. Next is the prefixes. Honestly, if you're just a gamer, you'll just see RX. But there's also those like Pro, which is for workstations like I mentioned earlier, and same with Instinct. Next is the generation number. You'll see some RX 5000 series, 7000 series, and so on. Next is the performance tier. 600 or below usually means entry level, 700 usually means mid-range, and 800 to 900 usually means high-end and enthusiast. The last 2 numbers can also be changed. This basically means it's a different model of that card. Next comes suffixes. Notably, you'll see XT or XTX. XT basically means it's a better, more enhanced version of the original base model, and XTX is just a better XT. And there you go. Have you ever wondered how Intel names their GPUs? Well, even though it's still simple, let me help you. Now, just to be clear, I'm not going to be talking about integrated graphics. What I am going to talk about is their physical GPUs, which only lies to the Intel Arc lineup. There's not a lot to talk about here, so let me make this quick. The first letter you usually see after Intel Arc is the generation. As of now, only A exists, but it should go to maybe B or C in the future, I don't know. The first digit usually means its performance level. 3 means entry level, 5 means mid-range, and 7 means high-end. And the last 2 digits, it's the performance level within the performance level, I guess. Basically, the higher this number is, the better the GPU performs. So something like the Intel Arc A770 is high-end. As far as I know, there's nothing much more to Intel GPU, so yeah. You wanna play games in 1080p but you don't know which graphics card to get? Well then let me help you. I'll give a list of 5 and we'll start with AMD, the RX 6650 XT, and the RX 7600. Now of course, since it's AMD, in traditional fashion, both of these are really good price to performance cards, with of course the RX 7600 being better than the 6650 XT. Overall, if you see these two and you're a Team Red player, then you might as well try to get at least one of them. Although do keep in mind that AMD doesn't really have as good of a ray tracing technology. Now for Team Green, the GTX 1650 Super, the RTX 3060, and the RTX 4060. Now if it wasn't obvious, the RTX 4060 is the best out of the bunch, offering DLSS 3.0 and being very power efficient. The RTX 3060 is also very viable if you can find one at a discounted price. The 1650 Super, while not super future-proof, it's still okay in performance when it comes to 1080p games. So in conclusion, if you're Team Red, you should probably get the RX 7600, and if you're Team Green, you should probably get the RTX 3060. So you want to do some 1440p gaming in 2024, but you don't know which GPU to get? Then I'll help you. I'll give you guys 6 options and 3 of them being from Nvidia and AMD, from most budget to most expensive. Starting off from AMD, we have the RX 6700 XT, the RX 7800 XT, and the 7900 XT. Each of these respectively go from budget to high-end. But just because it's budget doesn't mean that it can't handle 1440p. While the RX 6700 XT is a bit of the lower end of the GPUs, it doesn't mean it can't properly handle 1440p gaming still. If you want to ball a little bit higher, you can go 6800 XT, and if you want to go a little higher, then 7900 XT. Now for Nvidia, the RTX 3060 Ti, 4060 Ti, and the 4080. Once again, all of these cards are perfectly capable of handling 1440p and maybe even some 4K. Again, the 3060 Ti being older gen, so you won't get the benefits of DLSS 3 and other stuff, but again, still capable, you can't complain. I recently saw these case fans on Shopee, which is an e-commerce platform here in the Philippines, and something about them intrigued me. They look very similar to Lee & Lee's fans, down to aesthetics, infinite mirror, and all that stuff. So I decided, hey, my PC could use that. Probably. Now if you watch some of my older videos, you may notice that I already have case fans, and you'd be correct in saying that. So why am I upgrading? Well, because unfortunately, what I have are Molex fans. Yeah, I know, shut up. And look what came in the mail today. So today I finally unboxed the Jungle Leopard 4 Pro PWM fans. And honestly, for only $3.50 each, this is the result you get. Like, I am just mind blown at how good the aesthetics are overall, with the infinite mirror and the good light control with the controllers. It's amazing. In terms of performance, it's also really good. It's definitely not the best thing in the world, but how much you're paying for it is definitely less than how much power you get. If you want to know more about the details of these fans and an installation guide, then check out my YouTube channel right now. I finally posted a video of me unboxing these things and setting them up, so if you're interested, go watch it. Although I'll tell you now, it's not my proudest work for a long form video, but hopefully you guys still find it entertaining somewhat. So you're deciding to get some case fans for your PC and you don't know if you should add some to your PSU or not. Well, generally, unless if you have a really high wattage PSU or if your PSU is mounted at the top of your case, then most likely no. Your PSU always has its own ways of cooling itself, particularly in its own intake fan. PSUs mounted at the bottom will usually have the intake fan sucking the air from underneath the case and exhausting it out the back. Adding additional fans could easily increase noise if the fans you choose are noisy, and also at the same time, they're not super efficient anyway, and also it makes dust accumulation even faster. And also by adding around 2 or 1 extra fans for your PSU, it might ruin the neutral airflow, well, assuming you have neutral airflow in your PC. Regardless, if you should add case fans or not to your PSU, it's all up to you, but in my opinion, it's better you don't. Although I will commend that using case fans for your PSU isn't such a bad idea either, because it can increase the lifespan of your PSUs because it doesn't use its intake fan at full speed all the time. Again, whatever, it's up to you.
Your computer doesn't boot after you've installed a new heatsink in it?
If you remember this video over here where I installed the Johnsbow CR1200, it may look like the smoothest experience ever, but no, it was a nightmare. After I installed the heatsink, my computer didn't want to boot anymore. And can you guess the reason why?
It's because I applied too much pressure to my CPU.
Yes, that is in fact a factor as to why your computer does not want to boot. If you installed a new heatsink and your computer doesn't want to boot, chances are that heatsink is putting too much pressure on your CPU, causing your entire PC not to boot. Now, what's the solution to this? Loosen it. Yep, that's literally it. Here are some PC acronyms that everybody should know. Especially if you're just starting off as a builder, you're gonna need to know these. Today's video will all be about general hardware. CPU, Central Processing Unit. This is basically the brain of your computer. GPU, Graphics Processing Unit, also known as Video or Graphics Card. This handles all graphical related tasks. MOBO, Motherboard. This is the circuit board that powers and connects all of your components together. RAM, Random Access Memory. This is a temporary storage device used by your CPU to immediately get info. SSD, Solid State Drives, a durable and fast method of storing your data. HDD, Hard Disk Drive. This is less durable and way slower than SSD, but it's cheaper. PSU, PlayStation Unit. Okay, no, I'm just kidding. Power Supply Unit. This is the thing that powers your entire computer. And lastly, UPS, Uninterruptible Power Supply. Just in case of power outages, this saves your computer. It gives you plenty time to shut it off properly. And that's it for general hardware. PC acronyms you should know part 2. This video will mostly be about ports. USB, Universal Serial Bus. This is the standard connector for many peripherals. M.2. This is a form factor slot that's normally designed for NVMe SSDs. VGA, Video graphics array. This is an analog display connector that's usually considered outdated nowadays. HDMI, high definition multimedia interface. This is a very common audio and video output connector. And speaking of which, DP, DisplayPort, mainly used for high quality video. PCIe, Peripheral Component Interconnect Express, commonly used for expansion cards such as GPUs. SATA, Serial Advanced Technology Attachment, mostly used to power things, commonly SSDs and HDDs. USB-C, once again, Universal Serial Bus, Type C, similar to the normal USB, but this is faster and reversible. And that's it for some of the ports. I hope your knowledge for acronyms just went up a bit. The dreaded daisy chain PCIe connector. Is it really that bad? Well, actually, the answer is simple. Yesn't. In all seriousness, it really depends on your GPU and your cable quality. One 8-pin PCIe connector can deliver as much as 150 watts, so theoretically, if you use that daisy chain as long as the original together, it should deliver 300, right? Well, actually no. The amount of power it draws could be limited by the cable's quality. So to play it safe, just always assume it's like decently way below 300. Now what about your graphics card? Obviously try to stay away from like decently high-end cards. Just stay around the RTX 30 series' mid-range cards and lower just to be safe. Likewise for AMD, try to stay within the mid-range 6000 series and go lower than that. And of course, make sure that your power supply can handle your card. But there you go. Now you know when and when not to use the dreaded daisy chain PCIe connector. Can you make a vid on how you can know which GPU is best compatible with your CPU? I perfectly understand this comment because you cannot see this only with your naked eye. Now personally, what I would always do is go first to the bottleneck calculator. Simply select your CPU and then your ideal GPU, and then select graphics intensive tasks, and don't forget to change to your ideal resolution, and then look at the meter. If this percentage is over 5%, then that means that this system has a significant bottleneck. Or I guess it depends how high it is. As long as you're not hitting over like 15%, then I guess it's okay. Another thing to keep in mind is that make sure that both of them are balanced. If you picked a mid-range CPU, pick a mid-range graphics card. And likewise, high-end CPU, high-end GPU, low-end GPU, low-end CPU. There are other ways to figure this out, but generally that's how I would do it. So you recently saw this 180-degree PCIe adapter, and you're wondering whether or not it's safe to use. Well, I'll help you answer that. Now before we get into anything, what are these 180-degree adapters? Well, it helps with cable management and also it helps with aesthetics. I mean, just look at this. Like, geez, don't you just want that in your build? So now the question is if it's safe to use. Well, most of the time, yes. If you go to shops on Amazon or something, you can easily find these things in stock. But do remember, the answer if it's truly safe or not is your choice. Because you can easily get the wrong variant of these and easily blow up your GPU or something, but who knows. And also arguably one of the most important things is always check the reviews. Don't just go and find the cheapest option and buy that immediately. You gotta make sure that you're paying for quality stuff. Now would I personally invest in one of these? I don't know, maybe one day. Should you go air-cooled or water-cooled? And wow, HiddenGold got a haircut. Well, let's format this video differently and do it this way. In terms of budget, air-cooled. In terms of cooling, water-cooled. Ease of installation, air-cooled. Maintenance, air-cooled. Lifespan and reliability, air-cooled. Aesthetics, water-cooled. Now with all of these tallied up, you may be asking, why should I even go water-cooled anymore? Well, obviously if it fits in your budget and if you're running a high-end or overclocked CPU, then you should definitely consider an AIO. Generally, an AIO may be way pricier than an air cooler, but it is way more effective in terms of removing heat from your CPU. Or GPU, water-cooled GPUs do exist. But in conclusion, depending on your CPU, you may or may not need water-cooled and can just stick with air-cooled. But again, it's all up to you. Were you thinking of getting some quality audio for your videos, but you're a little bit tight on budget constraints? Well, then I'll give you 3 things to consider. I'm gonna start off with the cheapest option on my list, which is the BM800. This is a condenser microphone that is extremely cheap. This microphone costs $13, but you don't only get the microphone, you also get a sound card, a pop filter, and a boom arm that I'm currently using on my current microphone. This is the audio quality that the BM800 can provide. However, you need some post-process editing to make this sound good. Next is the Razer Siren Mini. I personally don't have this, but my friend does, and the audio quality sounds decently crisp.
Lorem ipsum dolores et amet consecutor ad lipsim elit.
It's a USB type condenser microphone that costs $25, or at least around that. And it's also very small. Lastly, it's my current microphone, the HyperX SoloCast. This one's a little more pricier at $37. Once again, it's another USB type microphone. It also comes with a tap to mute function. It's decently small, so it doesn't take a lot of space. And overall, it just sounds really good. But yeah, I hope this helped.
I know a lot of you may think that what I'm about to say is stupidly obvious, but I swear I still know some people who still do this. Stop using your laptops on your bed. Not only are you getting your musty, dusty, crusty ass dead skin that you haven't showered for in 3 months into your fans, but it's also restricting all of that airflow. So you know what's part 1 into that solution? Just invest in one of these. So now your laptop doesn't have to sit there and suck in all your gooch. But wait a second, the fan is still restricted. Problem solved. And there you go. Not only is your laptop now fully free from your gooch from the bed, but it also has breathable vents now. Now your laptop can freely take in the fresh air of the room you haven't cleaned in 3 months. Wow! And now you know what the most important step is? Ignore all of these tips if you own a MacBook Air.
Is the RTX 4060 actually a bad card? Well, let me just answer this real quick. No, there is no such thing as a bad GPU, just a badly priced one. But why is the 4060 so hated anyway? Well, let's dive through most of the factors as to why. Let's start first with the previous gen's RTX 3060. Obviously, when we compare these two, the 4060 definitely is better in some aspects. Overall, better performance, of course, around 10 to 20%. It has support for DLSS 3, and its newer architecture definitely makes it more power efficient than the previous gen's RTX 3060, with the 4060 consuming around 110 and the 3060 consuming around 170. Now the main difference is the VRAM. One of the reasons why the RTX 4060 is so hated is because of its low VRAM of 8GB, while the previous gen's 3060 was 12GB. While this can serve as a little problem, it's not super significant, especially when you play in lower resolutions like 1080p. So if you want to play on higher resolutions, then maybe you'll notice a difference. But bottom line, the RTX 4060 is a good card if you're willing to pay for it. In-Play Gears make pre-built systems. Are they any good? I'm planning to buy one. So while I did my scrolling, I noticed that they can provide as much as mid-range at best. From the few options it has, I noticed that the best thing is probably an i5 12th gen with an RTX 3050. Now don't get me wrong, this is a mess setup, not great, not terrible, but personally I wouldn't invest in an RTX 3050. I don't know, it's just not that good of an RTX card. But if you want to ignore that, overall the pre-built systems in-Play Gears offer decent aesthetics. Although do know if you care about cooling, I'm pretty sure those fans are not PWM. I wouldn't know for sure though, always do your own research. But overall, would I pay for their pre-built systems? Probably not. I would try to just build my own. Unless if you don't know how to build one. It's fine, just watch some Linus Tech tips and you'll be good. The RTX 3050, one of the most disgusting cards. What exactly makes it a bad card? Well, like I said in one of my other videos, there is no such thing as a bad GPU, just a badly priced one. Now, some of you may not agree with this, but technically, if you think about it, it is true. But before anything, let me tell you guys real quick why the RTX 3050 receives the hate it does. Let's start off with the VRAM. The RTX 3060's VRAM, as far as I know, can go as low as 4GB. Secondly, it's very 1080p limited. This card definitely will struggle in 1440p and especially 4K. Next, you can't really overclock it well. If you do plan to try to overclock your 3050, the headroom is lower because of thermal and power limitations. Among other reasons, the main factor I wanted to talk about is the price to performance. You can buy an RTX 2060 for cheaper and it still outperforms the 3050. But let's not kid ourselves, the RTX 3050 is a capable card as long as you find one for a really low price. Because again, you can find cheaper options that offer more value. The basics of binary. It's a numeral system that uses base 2, in simpler terms, ones and zeros. Binary is commonly expressed in 8 bits, also called 1 byte. Each of these numbers carry a decimal equivalent from right to left. The rightmost digit starts at 1 and keeps on multiplying by 2. 1, 2, 4, 8, 16 until it reaches 128. Let's assume this binary number, 001010001. Take a look at the ones, get their corresponding decimal value, and add them up, ignore the zeros. By adding this up, we get the decimal equivalent of this binary, which is 41. Additionally, there is also something called ASCII, which is the representation of text and electronics. Let's take our previous example, which we know is 41. In the ASCII table, 41 is the equivalent of closing parenthesis. Therefore, the binary value of closing parenthesis is this. There's also the term signed and unsigned. What we just discussed was unsigned. Signed binary is what it sounds like. It can be either positive or negative. The leftmost digit is what determines the sign. This will no longer be used for 128. This is now called the sign bit. If it's 0, it's positive. If it's 1, it's negative.
And there we go. So you finished building your brand new PC. But wait, you're getting 0 FPS and also a lot of instability issues. And maybe even some features are lacking, like your Wi-Fi. What is going on? Well, I'll tell you one thing, my friend. It's not your defective motherboard, but it's simply drivers. Drivers play a key role into the functionality of all of your hardware. Without drivers, you're basically just a sitting duck.
You know how your parents got you Lego sets for your birthday, and obviously you're gonna need instructions to know how to build them? Well, your computer's instructions are drivers in order to help build this, in some sort of metaphorical sense. So the next time you build your computer, don't forget to install drivers because it's one of the most important things your computer can have. Molex fans, the dark ages of cooling. Okay, whatever, they're not that bad, but I'm gonna tell you why you shouldn't invest in them. Well, it's simple. Because they're bad. Like, okay, they can get the job done here and there, but you can't control them via PWM. Meaning that they will constantly run at full speed regardless of the temperature inside your chassis. Investing in PWM fans is way more efficient than investing in Molex fan. Now, okay, sure, Molex fans can be okay if you're running something like a low-end work PC. But if you're a gamer who likes to play a lot of games, or you're just doing a lot of intensive stuff, then yeah, you're gonna need that PWM cooling badly. But Molex fans are cheap, so that's a reason for some people to get them. But overall, don't make the mistake I did, just invest in PWM fans, are way better. So you're rocking the GT 710 and you're planning to upgrade that Nvidia GPU to a higher grade one. But maybe now is not the time for you to do that, at least now in December 2024. Now I get it, the holiday seasons are coming, so you're gonna treat yourself with a brand new something, and it might be a GPU. But that might not be the best idea because the RTX 50 series is coming out anyway. Now this can lead to two things, either you'll get an RTX 50 series something, or you're going to get a previous gen. Now why shouldn't you get something like a 4060 Ti or 4070 right now? Well, not only is it because the 50 series is coming out and the price might drop, Nvidia is discontinuing the RTX 40 series, so you may see scalpers either drive up the price, or some people who just want to get rid of their old stuff dive it down. Honestly, you're gonna see a lot of fluctuations in price during that time. The 50 series will drop around January of 2025, so honestly, it's better to wait a few months after that drop so you can see if the prices have dropped for some of the older gen cards. Again, or unless if you're planning to invest in a 50 series, go right ahead. The day has finally come. Today, Intel has just released their Battlemates GPUs, and oh boy am I excited. I'm not here to waste your time because you probably already heard of this, but $250 for a decent 1080p and 1440p graphics card? Man, that's something Nvidia could never. 12 gigs of GDDR6 VRAM, 192-bit memory bus, and obviously their architecture could be a little better, but you know, it's Intel, come on. You can now see results from creators like Linus benchmark these, so you can see if it's worth your consideration. This card competes with the RX 7600, the RTX 4060, and in some, if not most cases, it does in fact beat these two cards, especially through price to performance. And Intel's graphics drivers are starting to become a little better now. You will now be experiencing less instability issues than it did with the A series. So thank God we finally have a good 1440p option. I've been dying for this day. Oh, I kinda want one now. Have you ever looked at palette GPUs and wondered what's the difference between all these variants? Let me help you out. Let's start with GameRock. GameRock is probably the highest tier for all of these variants. This mostly focuses on aesthetics in terms of RGB and also performance. Jetstream. Jetstream focuses on quiet but efficient cooling. Super Jetstream. It's basically just a better Jetstream, if it wasn't obvious. Dual. This is usually on the cheaper side and provides dual fans. So honestly, their cooling is not that bad. StormX. StormX is usually a smaller, more compact version of their GPUs, and it's mainly used for smaller builds. And then the last one is not really used anymore, but it's ComX. ComX was basically just fanless GPU variants, and solely relied on passive cooling. I hope this helped. I also want to thank you guys for helping me reach 600 subscribers recently. I deeply appreciate it. You've probably seen these things called snap-on coolers. Heck, even I use one. But with the way they look and the way you install them, do you think they're actually safe? Well, let me help you answer that. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the coolers that you have to screw all the way in. But this one in particular is what it sounds like. You just snap it into place. But by the sounds of it, it looks like you're putting a lot of unnecessary pressure. Maybe even too much to the point that your computer won't even boot. So I guess it's natural to ask yourself, would this snap my motherboard or something? Well, under normal conditions, no. They're unlikely to snap or even damage your motherboard in the slightest, assuming you installed it properly. Improper installation could easily damage, and especially over tightening can also damage. And honestly, snap-on coolers aren't as effective and efficient as using screws. Overall, snap-on coolers are good, but I don't recommend it for everybody, especially for those running high-end CPUs. Ow.
Hey guys, so I've been doing Certified Goldn IT for around 14 weeks now, and I cannot believe that this
this was such an opportunity. I know I usually post a lot of IT guides and just random videos from time to time, but honestly, this is one of the best things that's happened to my channel. Because not only am I growing my audience a lot more than before, but I'm also doing something that I really love at the side, which is PC stuff. The past 4 months have really been an amazing journey so far, and I plan to keep on continuing it, especially since you guys are still here to support me. By the time you're seeing this video, it's probably already New Year's depending on your time zone, but yeah, 2024 will definitely be a rememberable year for me and my channel. Again, I just want to thank you guys so much for your support on both my YouTube channel and my TikTok account. It really means so much. I know I've said that a crap amount of times now, but I just can't express it enough. But yeah, this is my send-off from 2024. I'll see you guys in 2025 and with more Certified Golden IT stuff.